Abby was very upset because her husband Vance had suddenly disappeared. She had just gone through a tough time to get away from some people who were blackmailing her. She thought once that was over, everything would go back to normal with Vance. But Vance found out she had been unfaithful at the worst possible time, which shocked her even more. No matter how many times she called, texted, or emailed, he didn't respond. Her friend Steve and his team couldn't find him either, so she decided to stay at the apartment in case he called or came back. Vance, on the other hand, was trying to stay unnoticed. He spent most of Sunday editing several DVDs into a shorter 2-hour version of what had happened. He made several copies for his use and kept them in a room with the original DVDs until he needed them. Vance also looked up the names and addresses of the wives of the men involved in what happened to Abby. He found out that none of them worked because their husbands were rich. 3 of them did charity work to boost their status. Vance didn't want to go to work on Monday. He knew Abby and those involved would probably try to pressure him. They all started work at 9 a.m., but Vance usually started at 8 a.m. To avoid seeing them, he went to work at 7:15 a.m. and left a note for his boss, Albert, saying, "Albert, I'm sorry I can't stay at work today. I felt sick suddenly and might have a fever. I don't want to get anyone else sick. I'm going to see a doctor and hope to be back soon. Thank you for understanding, Vance Rayle." Vance used his ID badge to confirm the time he arrived and left in case anyone checked. After leaving, he withdrew another $1,000 from an ATM. He took a taxi to the lawyer he found online. The office opened at 8 a.m., but he had to wait until the lawyer came in at 9 a.m. The secretary asked if he had an appointment. He said no. The lawyer had some free time before her first appointment, so Vance decided to wait. At 9:10, the lawyer, a professionally dressed woman, welcomed him to her office. He told her what happened and that he wanted to serve his wife with divorce papers quickly. The lawyer asked for evidence. Vance gave her the DVD. She watched it quickly to check his story. When asked where he got the video, Vance couldn't say because he didn't know. The lawyer explained that without a legal source for the video, he couldn't use it in court against his wife. But he could file for divorce due to irreconcilable differences, which would still end the marriage legally. The lawyer recognized some men in the video. She said if he could prove the video was real, he could sue the men and the company for ruining his marriage. Since Abby made more money than him, he wouldn't have to pay her any alimony. In fact, she recommended he ask for alimony from her. They had no property or big savings to split, making the divorce simple. Vance said he didn't want any of her money, he just wanted a quick and clean divorce. The lawyer had standard forms her secretary could fill out that day. Abby could be served at work the next morning if he wanted. Vance asked for this to happen at 9:15 a.m. on Tuesday. She agreed, and he paid her half of her fee in cash. The rest would be due once a court date was set. After leaving the lawyer's office, Vance went to a courier service. He had 5 packages wrapped in plain brown paper. He asked for them to be delivered at 9 a.m. sharp the next morning, paying extra for the precise timing and using a fake name and address as the sender. On his way back to the hotel, he stopped by the post office and bought a shipping box. He placed the original DVDs and a copy of the 2-hour DVD inside and mailed it to himself at the company's address, using third-class mail. He wasn't in a rush for it. He just wanted to make sure the recordings were out there until he got them at work and decided what to do next. He still had 1 copy of the 2-hour DVD in his hotel room and the original files on his laptop. He felt pretty sure he wouldn't lose them. That afternoon, Vance went to a clinic to get tested for diseases. After seeing her with many men and knowing they were all cheating on their wives, he figured Abby wasn't their only fling. Who knows what diseases they might have given her? He wanted to know if he had caught something from her. Vance stayed away from work again on Tuesday, saying he was sick. He would have loved to see Abby's reaction when she got served, but better safe than sorry. He didn't know what the VPs might do when cornered, but they had a lot of power, and he wanted to avoid trouble. On Tuesday morning, Abby was served divorce papers at her office in front of her co-workers. She asked for and got the day off. She couldn't handle the shame and knew she would cry all day if she stayed. About an hour after Abby left, things blew up for the 5 vice presidents. Their wives called them, screaming and saying divorce papers were on the way. The wives had watched enough of the DVD to see their husband's guilt. Some of them had suspected cheating before, but their husbands always denied it. This time, there was no denying the proof. Steve and the others knew Vance was behind this. They knew because he had left a photo for Abby from that night on their kitchen table. How Vance got the photo or the video was a mystery. Steve was shocked that something this big was happening to them. They didn't want rumors to spread at work, so they agreed not to talk about their divorces there. No matter how Vance did it, Steve wanted to make sure he paid. There would be payback. Vance was in big trouble. On Wednesday morning, Vance knew he couldn't keep pretending to be sick. 2 days off work was enough, and he had always been a good employee. No one gets fired for being sick. He thought news of the trouble would be all over the office by now, but nothing happened. Albert asked if he was feeling better and if he had made any progress with hard-to-get clients. Vance had left his cell phone in his hotel room, still turned off. No one knew where he was staying, and he wanted to keep it that way, but his day was about to get worse. At 10:30 a.m., there was a knock on his office door. When he opened it, he saw 4 police officers. 2 had their hands on their guns. "Yes? Can I help you?" Vance asked. "Can I see some ID, please? Are you Vance Rayle?" one officer asked. Vance gave them his driver's license. "Yes, that's me. What's this about?" he asked. "You have the right to remain silent," the officer began. Vance was handcuffed. They didn't say what he was charged with. 2 officers held him while the other 2 packed up his computer and office files. They asked Albert if Vance had files anywhere else, but Albert said he didn't know. Vance had no idea what was happening as he was led out of the building in shame. In the lobby, Steve Crenshaw and 3 other VPs were waiting, smirking. Steve spoke as the officers paused. "We had high hopes for you, Vance," Steve said. "I'm very disappointed. Did you really think you'd get away with stealing $200,000 from the company? Wasn't your salary enough? With your wife making twice as much, you should have been happy. You disgust me. I hope they lock you up for good," he shouted. Vance was taken to the police station, booked and charged with grand larceny. He was worried, but knew he was innocent. He knew they would have to show their evidence, which he could disprove. But he was most worried about his job. If he was fired for cause, he would have to pay back his Harvard education costs. Even if the charges were dropped but he lost his job, he would be in financial trouble for years. This was bad, no matter how he looked at it. At his hearing on Thursday morning, he was formally charged, and the judge set bail at $500,000. To Vance, that might as well have been $1 billion. He wasn't leaving any time soon. For the last 2.5 weeks, Abby had tried many times to visit and talk to him in jail. He understood she was just a tool for the vice president and would only make things worse. He wasn't having any of it. When she realized she wasn't on his approved visitor list, she got a top lawyer to represent him. Vance did meet the lawyer, not knowing who hired him, and when he found out it was Abby, he thanked the lawyer and sent him away. Next, a man Vance knew by name and reputation but had never met visited him. As that visitor was leaving, a woman showed up. She walked in like she owned the place. To Vance, this was proof she was behind all his problems. When she arrived, she noticed Victor Mansfield, a major rival, leaving. This concerned her. "Hello, Vance. Long time no see. But before we talk, I need to know why Victor was here." "Oh, you mean the guy that just left?" "Yes, Victor Mansfield," she confirmed. "He said he could make all the charges against me vanish if I did him a favor." "What favor?" she asked. "He wanted me to say there are no safety checks at DFSB and that employees often steal clients' money for themselves." Shocked, she asked, "Are you going to accept his offer?" "No," Vance said firmly. "What did you say to Victor?" she continued. "I told him to go to hell. I said I'd rather do time for being falsely accused than lie and ruin the company's good name." He spoke with determination. She was confused. He claimed to be wrongly accused, yet he refused an easy way out. This didn't match what she first thought about him. "Thank you for that, Mr. Rayle. Few people surprise me like you just did. But you don't seem happy to see me." "Why should I be? I know why you're here. You came to rub it in my face after saying I would fail." "Rub it in? No way. You almost convinced me, and then you do something like this? I just want to know why. Why did you steal that money when you were so close to finishing your internship? I needed to hear it from you." He looked her in the eyes and said, "Look, miss, whatever your name is, for the 100th time, I didn't steal or try to steal even a penny from DFSB or anyone else. It's just not true, and one day the truth will come out. When it does, you'll owe me an apology. Remember that." She took a deep breath, sat down, and opened her briefcase. She showed him a bank account in his name with a balance of $200,000. "So, how do you explain this, Mr. Rayle?" Vance looked at the document and tossed it on the table. "This is not mine. I never opened an account at that bank." "Then how do you explain this document? Is that your signature or not?" She showed him another paper, the account application, with his signature at the bottom. He looked it over, searching for signs of forgery, but found none. "This is my signature, I can't deny that. But I never applied to open this account. I can't explain how—" He stopped, noticing the date. He knew he'd been framed, and his future now seemed darker than ever. "I stand corrected. That is my signature, and I did sign that document, but I didn't know what it was at the time," he admitted. "So you admit it then?" she pressed. "I admit to signing, but I didn't know what I was signing." "How is that possible, Mr. Rayle?" "Abby, my wife, and I had just gone through a tough time. It was April Fool's Day, the same date as on this application. Abby told me we needed to sign new health insurance forms because a new company was taking over DFSB policies. I was in a rush to get to work, so I quickly signed where she indicated. This form must have been mixed in with those insurance forms. I'll give you points for creativity, Mr. Rayle, but we haven't changed our insurance provider in over 5 years, and there's no plan to. I think you just made that story up." Feeling defeated, he said, "You're just like everyone else, including my wife, using me as a scapegoat to hide their own crimes. Does it show when the money was moved and from which computer?" he asked. "I had our IT team look into it, and the evidence is just as bad," she replied. "How so?" he asked. "The electronic records show the transaction happened at 10:07 p.m. Tuesday night, the night before you got arrested. It was made from your work computer using your company login ID, Rayle 801. Also, since you started working at DFSB, there hasn't been a single investment transaction under your ID. It looks like you've just been wasting time during your internship." Rayle 801? What is that? "It's your unique login ID for our computer systems to track your work, Mr. Rayle. You got it during your 2-week training." "What are you talking about? That's not my ID. My training was only 45 minutes, and I've never been given a login ID. I used a backdoor ID I saw Stan use during the short demo he gave me. No one gave me any login access or 2 weeks of training," he explained. "That's a very creative story, Mr. Rayle. The records show you got that ID on August 2nd, your second day of work. Are you saying you've been using another ID? Why would you do that? To take credit for someone else's work?" "I don't know who else might be using that backdoor ID, but I've used it a lot since I started, with great success," he said proudly. "Is that so? What is the login ID you've been using, Mr. Rayle?" "Hidden Treasure ACR. If you check, you'll see the thousands of transactions I've done to make money for our clients and DFSB." "Who told you that? Where did you learn that?" she demanded. "I didn't mean to upset you. I saw Stan use it in the demo he gave me, and since I didn't get any other ID, I used that one. Sorry if using it bothers you," he said. Her face twisted in confusion. "No one is supposed to use that ID. I don't know how you got it, but I will find out if you're lying. I'll check this for sure. Just ask my boss, Albert Iddings. His office is across the hall from mine. He can confirm I never got a login ID." "That's not possible. Albert isn't your boss. You were supposed to work under Steve Crenshaw from day one. How do you know Albert anyway? Not many people in the company even know his name." "Ma'am, I'm sure you're trying to help, but you don't know what you're talking about. You need to get your facts straight. I started work on August 1st and called Steve Crenshaw. He told me Albert would be my boss. Albert gave my wife and me a tour of operations. I've been working near him since day one. Check it out if you don't believe me." "You are either the best liar I've ever met or a big victim. I'm afraid to find out which. I have one more question. Your starting salary was $150,000. Why would you steal $200,000 with just 3 months left in your internship? Didn't you know you would be billed for your education if you quit or got fired before the year was up? Why did you do it?" Vance laughed uncontrollably, making her even angrier. Lady, you don't have a clue. My salary is only $50,000 a year, just $50,000. My wife makes the big bucks. She started 2 days after me as a PA for the VPs upstairs. They started her at $75,000. 3 months later, she got a raise to $87,500. 6 months in, she got another raise and now makes $100,000, double what I make. I have a master's degree in finance, and she has a bachelor's in accounting, but she makes twice my salary. I just don't get it. It has caused problems in our marriage, and she looks down on me now. The only good thing from all this is that I'll get my divorce. Only $50,000? Your wife works at DFSB? A divorce? That's right. And mine isn't the only one. Everyone at work now knows about the 5 VPs who are getting a divorce. Why don't you fill me in since we're in fantasy land now? Not that it matters because you can't do anything about it, but I'll tell you. My dear wife Abby has been involved with at least 5 of the 6 VPs upstairs. I can prove it with video evidence. Steve Crenshaw, Frank Sutton, Bernard Ledbetter, Craig Barstow, and Philip Harmon, along with another guy, were all part of it. I sent a copy of the video to the wives of all 5 of them. I bet some of them are thinking about divorces already. I don't know who the 6th guy is, but if I see him shirtless again, I'll find out. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. Where do you come up with this stuff? Do you just make it up? It's unbelievable. You should write storybooks because your imagination is wild. I haven't heard anything about divorces among the VPs. Why are you making this up? Making it up? Ask their wives, or ask my lawyer Taylor on Lawrence Boulevard. They have a copy of the DVD. I have another copy in my hotel room at the Brighton, plus my laptop has the original files. My phone has the links to the cloud where I downloaded them. Don't just believe me. Check it out if you don't trust me. Yes, I will, Mr. Rayle. Not that you know much because you seem clueless, but what kind of account did I allegedly transfer the large amount from? It was from a secret account in the name of DFSB. A secret account, huh? And who knows the account number for that secret account? The board members, the executive VPs, and the accounting staff. Why? Have you ever wondered how I knew about it? And more than that, how did I get the account number? And the main thing is this. Why would I, a Harvard graduate with a master's degree, be so dumb to transfer a big amount like that and leave it untouched? A 3rd grader could track that money. Why would I make such a huge mistake? Does that make sense? Why didn't I move some of it, or spend it, or invest it? Why would I do it in a way that I'd get caught? The blonde woman had no answer to that. Then she asked, "This 6th man you mentioned, you said you could identify him with his shirt off. How?" "Oh, him. He never faced the camera, so I can't identify him that way. I never saw his face, but he did have a cool tattoo on the right side of his lower back. It was a tattoo of an anchor with a snake around it. It would have looked cool to me if he hadn't been with my wife." The blonde woman jumped up, quickly gathered her things, and ran from the room without another word. I guess she couldn't handle the truth, thought Vance. What's the old saying? The truth will set you free? Well, in his case, the truth had landed him in jail and things looked bad for him. Vance was taken back to his cell where he listened to Martina McBride's song Anyway, holding on to the smallest hope. His court-appointed lawyer said his case wouldn't be heard for another 8 weeks. He couldn't explain the delay, it was just Vance's bad luck. 1 day turned into 3, then 5, then a week since the blonde woman last showed up. She had caused nothing but pain and trouble. Vance hoped his benefactor would show up. He remembered she said she had connections at DFSB, and maybe those connections could find out what was really going on. His jailer showed up and took him to the front. He thought it might be an unscheduled visit from his lawyer. He was led to a small window and told to sign a form. Once signed, the woman behind the window gave him all his stuff from when he was arrested. Confused, he asked what was going on. He was told he was being released. "Did someone post my bail? If my wife did it, I'll just stay inside," Vance said. "No, sir. No bail. You're a free man. All charges have been dropped and your name has been cleared." "Good luck, sir. No hard feelings," the man said, extending his hand. "But I don't know where to go. My hotel room was probably cleared out long ago, and I refuse to go back to my wife," Vance exclaimed. "Your ride is already here, sir, waiting outside." "Right this way." And he opened the door to freedom. Vance took a deep breath, feeling free at last. "Excuse me, Mr. Rayle, we've been waiting for you." "Your ride is right over here," a big man said, pointing to a limo. Vance panicked. He thought this was a setup by Steve or his men to take him away. He felt he had no choice but to run. He sprinted away with all his might. As soon as Vance started running, he heard the big man say, "Oh no!" and chase after him. At the same time, the limo drove off fast, trying to block his escape. Vance thought he could outrun the big man, who was heavier and might not be as fast. He was wrong. Vance didn't know the big man had been a running back in football and knew how to run. Vance was caught in under a block, and the limo showed up just as he was grabbed from behind. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Rayle. We mean you no harm, I swear. It is our job to make sure nothing happens to you. We could lose our jobs if we don't get you to the meeting." "Meeting? What meeting? I don't know about any meeting. Who am I supposed to meet?" "Sir, I don't know everyone who will be there. Our job is to take you there safely and protect you." "Listen, I respect your job, but there are dangerous people who want to hurt me. For all I know, you could be taking me to them." "It's not like that, Mr. Rayle. Trust me. If you didn't want to come with us, I have a message to give you." "What message?" "It sounds strange, Mr. Rayle, but here it is. You are the ashtray, Mr. Rayle. Solid gold." Vance knew who the message was from right away. It wasn't a threat. This made him decide to go with them. He was curious about what would happen next. He knew he was free from all charges. What could this be about? They walked with him through the lobby of DFSB. People stared at him because his crime was all over the news. No one stopped them or spoke to them. Vance thought no one wanted to mess with his two strong escorts. They had a special key for the elevator to reach the 42nd floor. Vance hadn't been there before. The lobby was fancy, but the boardroom was even more impressive. In the room, a blonde woman stood with two men on her left and another on her right. His bodyguards stood nearby with their hands folded. "Welcome, Mr. Rayle," she said. "Thanks for joining us at Davenport Financial Services and Banking. Some people you'll meet today might be familiar, others not. I'll introduce them as needed, but first, I want to tell you a true story. This is a special board meeting and it is being recorded. So, everything said and done here is on record." She looked Vance in the eye and he nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Rayle." 23 years ago, Conrad Davenport, founder and CEO of this company, was married to Lucille Davenport. They had 3 kids, 2 boys and 1 girl. Their kids were in junior high when Conrad and Lucille had problems in their marriage. Conrad worked a lot and was rarely home. This distance grew between them. Lucille missed him and asked him to spend more time with the family. Before their 14th anniversary, Conrad decided to fix things and planned a 2-week cruise as a surprise. But 3 days before the cruise, Conrad got pictures of Lucille with another man who worked for him. That man was fired immediately. Lucille felt very guilty and begged Conrad to still take her on the cruise to heal their relationship. But Conrad was hurt and went alone. On the cruise, he met Gabriela Ruiz, a lively Latin American woman. They quickly became close, but at the end of the voyage, Gabriela had to go home. Conrad returned too, trying to forgive Lucille. They saw a marriage counselor. Then Gabriela told Conrad she was pregnant. He promised to be there for her and the baby. But Gabriela's wealthy family didn't like Conrad. They told her not to see him again. Gabriela couldn't leave her family, so Conrad went back to Lucille. When Lucille found out about the pregnancy, she filed for divorce. Conrad gave her a fair settlement, keeping only the company. Gabriela's family, being Catholic, was against abortion, so she had the baby. They wanted nothing to do with the baby and made her give it up for adoption. Using their money and power, they hid the birth and adoption records so well that they were sure nobody would ever link the baby to the Ruiz family. Conrad was heartbroken to learn later that the child was gone and felt that God was punishing him. He tried very hard to find the child, but never did. The Ruiz lawyers blocked every way to get information, so he never found the baby. The only thing Gabriela told Conrad was the name she gave the baby at birth, Antonio Conrad Ruiz, named after her grandfather and Conrad. Lucille became bitter and blamed Conrad for their marriage falling apart. She spent all her energy making him as miserable as possible, trying to turn their 3 children against him. Because of this, the children's lives were filled with anger from their mother, who wanted them to cut ties with their father. Their happy lives turned into misery, and they blamed the newborn baby for their troubles. They believed that if the baby had not been born, their parents would have stayed together and been happy again. So the three children understandably hated the baby. They saw it as a curse and the reason for their unhappy childhood. When they got to high school, they could no longer stand their mother, so they left her and went to live with their father. He loved them and did his best, but he couldn't undo the past. The damage was done. Those children spent many years in therapy to learn to focus on the good things in life. Conrad died 10 years ago from a heart attack. His three children were adults by then, but it was still very hard for them. At the time of his death, Davenport Financial Services and Banking had investments worth over $300 billion and a net worth of $25 million. However, he wanted his legacy to be divided equally among all his children, all four of them, including the baby. The assets have been held in trust since then. His will said that the hidden child should be found and given every chance for success, with the best education and an opportunity to join the firm if he wanted to. After Conrad's death, DFSB hired many private investigators and the best lawyers in the country. They paid off a lot of judges and agency heads to find out who this child was. $7.5 million later, they finally found a strong lead. When you were 14 years old, I took the water bottle you drank from, ran your DNA against Conrad's, and found out that you are that child. You are Conrad's lost son, his hidden treasure. You were born Antonio Conrad Ruiz, but your adoptive parents gave you a new name. My name is Camille Davenport Redford. Conrad Davenport was my father. He was also the father of my younger brothers, Damon and Eric Davenport, who are sitting next to me. And now, the three of us have found our half-brother. You? That can't be true, Vance blurted. My parents would have told me, he said loudly. It is true, and we invite you to do your own DNA test if you want. Vance, your adoptive parents are wonderful people. They gave you a loving home when your birth mother had to give you up. I was actually jealous of how warm and loving your home was. And in case you haven't figured it out yet, your benefactor is your biological father, Conrad Davenport. Mixed feelings flooded his mind as he took in everything he had just heard. Everything he thought he knew about his life had just been turned upside down. Tears ran down his face, tears of confusion, loss, bewilderment, and uncertainty. He didn't know what to think. Vance stuttered, So what happens now? First things first, Vance. The three siblings walked over to him. Camille gave him a big hug that surprised him. For the first time, he felt a special connection to her. Damon and Eric shook his hand, and Camille kissed his cheek before the three of them went back to their seats. Camille continued, Besides us three Davenports, the man seated to my right is Warren Benson, the trustee over the company, our father's will and estate, and our father's closest friend. He is here to make sure that everything done today follows the trust and our father's will, making sure all the details are correct. Warren smiled and nodded. The board also has 6 vice presidents who are not here today for reasons I will explain soon. You asked what happens now? Well, now we are going to get some clear answers to some direct questions and reveal some things that have been hidden until recently. I do have one question, Camille, if I may call you that. Of course, Vance. You've earned the right in many ways. What's your question? I've worked here for about 9 months, and until you visited me in jail, I never saw you around here, not in the elevator, cafeteria, or parking lot, nowhere. That's right, Vance. DFSB opened a new branch in Asia last year, and I've been there all this time helping to set it up. However, I have been getting regular updates about what has been going on here while I've been away. What brought me back at that moment is now clear, Vance said. I understand, murmured the man. If you're ready, Vance, Camille continued, I want to begin clearing things up so we can settle this matter quickly. Our first task is to look into the embezzlement charges against you. Terrence, could you ask the district attorney to join us if he has arrived? One of the security guards nodded and stepped out. He returned shortly with a well-dressed man. Vance Rayle, this is District Attorney Mark Settlemeyer. He's here to help clear up some recent issues. Thanks for joining us, Mark. Mark nodded and took a seat at the long table. Terrence, please ask Gene Tuttle and Byron Bailiff to join us. Both men came in after being introduced to Vance. Camille was clearly in charge. Byron, thank you for coming. What's your position here and how long have you worked for us? I am a senior IT designer consultant and I've been here for 10 years. Thanks, Byron. Can you tell us about a transfer of $200,000 into Vance Rayle's personal bank account on Tuesday, May 7th? Byron handed out copies of a document, which Camille passed around the table. These are records I've compiled to document that transaction. They show that at 10:08 p.m., someone used Mr. Vance Rayle's Logan ID to transfer $200,000 into his personal account. Thank you, Byron. Do you have an answer to the other question I asked you to look into? Camille asked. Yes, ma'am, he replied. I checked every use of Mr. Rayle's Logan ID from August 1st of last year up to today. This transfer is the only time that ID was used. Thank you, Byron. Please stay. I may have more questions for you. Yes, ma'am, Byron agreed. Jean, thank you for coming as well. What's your position here, and how long have you worked for us? I'm Jean Tuttle, Chief of Security here for 17 years. Thanks, Jean. Can you tell us about the security search I requested for the time around 10 p.m. on Tuesday night, May 7th? Jean handed over some documents. These are the records of ID badge use for building entry. And what time did Mr. Rayle enter the building that night? He didn't. A thorough search showed Mr. Rayle never entered the building that day. I also reviewed video footage, and he was not seen entering or exiting DFSB on May 7th. I see. Thank you, Jean. Can you tell us who did enter the building around 10 p.m. that night? Yes, ma'am. At 10:02, Vice President Steve Crenshaw used his badge to enter the building, and video confirms this. No one else entered for over an hour before or after. Mr. Crenshaw left the building at exactly 10:21. Thank you, Jean. That's all for now, but please wait outside. Of course, ma'am, Jean said as he left the room. Byron, how many people had access to Mr. Rayle's Logan ID? I cannot say for sure, ma'am. How many people are certain to have known it? 1. Steve Crenshaw sent me an official request to create Mr. Rayle's Logan ID and said he would give it to Mr. Rayle himself. Camille then turned to the DA. Well, Mark? You convinced me to drop all charges against Mr. Rayle earlier. Now I think we can make a strong case against Mr. Crenshaw for embezzlement. But why would a vice president frame an entry-level employee? Mark asked. Motive, Camille echoed. Let's see if we can find out. Mr. Rayle? Yes, Vance replied. Can you tell the DA if there's a reason Mr. Crenshaw might want to frame you? I believe so, Vance confirmed. My wife, Abby Rayle, started working here as a personal assistant to the VPs soon after me. She was well paid. I discovered an affair between her and Mr. Crenshaw. I shared evidence of this with his wife. I think Mr. Crenshaw's actions may be a result of that. Mark Settlemyre nodded thoughtfully. That gives us a reason. Thank you, Mr. Rayle. This clarifies a lot. Crenshaw was coming after me and tried to set me up as payback, Vance explained. Camille turned to Mark again. I've heard enough, Mark said. He picked up his phone. Yes, this is DA Mark Settlemyre. I need a police car at DFSB as soon as possible. 15 minutes? Great. Mark, can I ask Jean, our security chief, to bring a couple of men and hold Mr. Crenshaw until your officers arrive? He might cause trouble when we ask him to pack up his things. Also, I want it on record that if Mr. Crenshaw is found guilty of stealing $200,000 from DFSB, he should be fired right away. Does everyone agree? Camille asked. Damon and Eric both nodded. Let the record show everyone agrees. Is that proper protocol, Warren? The trustee nodded. The DA and security chief smiled as they left the room. Vance then said, Thank you, Camille. You've done a great job. I appreciate all you've done to figure this out. He smiled. We're not done yet, she said. We've made a start, but there's still more to uncover. Can you stay with me a bit longer, Vance? There are a few more details I'd like to clear up while we keep looking for facts. Of course, I'm still trying to take in everything I've learned so far. Camille turned to Terrence. Can you please ask David Redding and Stan Mahaffey to join us? Terrence nodded and soon came back with the two men, who looked confused about why they were called. Thank you for your time this morning. We'll let you get back to work soon after answering a few questions. Let's start with you, David. What do you do at DFSB? Do? Well, I manage a group of accounts, quite a mixed bunch, he replied. Thank you, David. Does Albert Iddings work under you? Yes, ma'am. He's one of several people I supervise. He manages a lot of client accounts. Have you seen any change in Albert's work since August last year? Looking nervous, he answered, Yes, ma'am, a big change. 3/4 of his client accounts went from being unprofitable to doing really well. Albert got big raises because of it. I see, she continued. And were all these improvements recorded under Albert's login ID? David looked down at the table. No, ma'am. I didn't check it first. They were all his accounts, after all. But when you asked me to look into the logs, I found that none of the transactions were under Albert's login. He took credit for them, though. Did you find out which login ID was used? Yes, ma'am. Hidden Treasure ACR was the ID used for every transaction. No other ID was used. Did you notice anything unusual about the transactions? Yes, ma'am. They were very clever using different financial tools in a unique way. I showed them to Stan Mahaffey for his review. Thank you, David. You may go now. Stan, what did you think of the transaction records David showed you? Like he said, Mrs. Redford, I've never seen such smart use of tactics to make money for both the client and DFSB. They were so impressive that I added them to our investment strategy programs right away for everyone to use. Would you say these tactics have helped improve performance at DFSB? Yes, ma'am. Profits have gone up 12 to 15% already this year, and there is still room for more growth. Do you know who used the Hidden Treasure ACR ID to make these transactions? I have my guesses, ma'am, but I can't say for sure, he replied. Can you explain how the Hidden Treasure ACR ID was created? Yes, ma'am. Conrad Davenport added it as a backdoor to the system, like a master password. Did he tell you what Hidden Treasure ACR means? Yes, ma'am. He said it stands for Hidden Treasure Antonio Conrad Ruiz, the name of his lost son. He meant that his son was valuable to him but hidden from him. To the best of your knowledge, did anyone else besides you, Damon, Eric, and myself know about this backdoor password? No, ma'am, I swear. I only used it for big demonstrations and never told anyone. One last question, Stan, if you don't mind. Yes, of course. How much training did you give Mr. Vance Rayle after he started working here? Embarrassed, he looked down. Almost none, ma'am. I spent about an hour with him early on, gave a quick demo, but never followed up with proper training. Is this normal practice here at DFSB? She asked. No, ma'am, it isn't, he replied, looking ashamed. Why didn't he get any more training, Mr. Mahaffey? I was told not to. Rayle any training that he would not be employed there long enough to warrant the time investment. And just who was it that told you that, Stan? Steve Crenshaw, ma'am. I'm sorry. He can be very intimidating and threatening. He told me that if I knew what was good for me, I would do as he asked. Thank you for your honesty, Stan. Is Steve going to make good on his threat and fire me, ma'am? No, I can assure you that Steve is no longer in a position to threaten anyone. Thank you, Stan. You may go. He nodded and nervously left the room. Camille, feeling confident, asked Terence to send in Albert Iddings, who soon took a seat at the large table. Hello, Albert. How's Doris doing lately? Camille asked her third cousin. Her arthritis still bothers her, but she's okay otherwise. Thanks for asking, Camille. I just have a couple of quick questions for you, Albert, and then you can get back to what you were doing. Where is Vance Rayle's office, Albert? It's right across the hall from mine, 0037. And how long has that been his office, Albert? Since he first came on board, day one. He answered. Then why isn't his name on the door, and why doesn't he have a phone assigned to his name after all this time? I can't say for sure. All I know is Mr. Crenshaw told me to put him in that office, and when your division VP tells you to do something, you do it. So I did. I asked several times to have his name put on his door, but no one did it. As for the phone, it's the same thing. I asked for service in his name, but the phone people never made it happen. Vance just used the generic phone on his desk. Thank you, Albert, that's all. Tell Doris I said hi, please. I will, thank you, he said before he left. Byron, thank you for your patience. Just one more question we'd like answered before we let you return to your good work, Camille said, turning her attention to him. Yes, ma'am. I'll be glad to answer anything. I asked you to track down the exact location and computer where all the transactions originated that used the login ID Hidden Treasure ACR. Were you able to do that? Yes, ma'am, quite easily, in fact. All of the transactions came from a computer connected to subnode 1422 Ethernet link in the basement office 0037. Thank you, Byron. You have been very helpful to me today. Thank you very much for your excellent service. You may return to your work now. Thank you for saying that, Mrs. Redford. It's been my privilege, he said before leaving. Terence, Would you please send Janet Wooten in, please? And she soon appeared. Thank you, Janet, for joining us. I have just a question or two for you, then you can be on your way. Yes, ma'am. How can I help you? You're the paymaster here at DFSB. Did you bring the records I asked for? Yes, ma'am. They're right here in this file folder. Good. Thank you. Can you please tell me what your instructions were that I gave you regarding Vance Rayle's salary? Yes, ma'am. You told me to pay Mr. Rayle bi-weekly based on an annual salary of $150,000. And is that what happened? Well, yes, ma'am, in a roundabout way. What do you mean? 3 days after Mr. Rayle started to work here, I got a call from Mr. Crenshaw, the division vice president overseeing the department for which Mr. Rayle would be working. He confirmed that Mr. Rayle's annual salary of $150,000 was correct, but that it was to be split according to Mr. Rayle's wishes. Split? In what way, Janet? He said that Mrs. Rayle would also be helping as a PA for a small amount of $100 per month. He said that Mr. Rayle wanted to lift Mrs. Rayle's morale by having $75,000 of his annual salary go to her, and only $50,000 to him. The remaining $25,000 of his annual salary, I was told to put in a specific holding account. Some here call it a slush fund. It didn't make any sense to me, but I just did what I was told. I see. Is that all? Well, actually, 3 months later, I was asked to increase Mrs. Rayle's portion to $87,500 and put only the remaining $12,500 into the slush fund. Then, after 6 months, her pay was increased to $100,000 annual salary, while his stayed at $50,000 with nothing going into the slush fund anymore. And from whom did you get instructions about the Rayles' salaries? Mr. Crenshaw was the only one who contacted me with the details, but he always said it was all as Mr. Rayle wanted. I understand. Thank you for clearing that up for us. You may leave now. Camille turned to Terence again. Would you please ask Mrs. Graham to join us? Terence nodded and soon returned with Carolyn, who seemed very nervous to be there. It's good to see you again, Carolyn. Please have a seat, Camille offered. Camille looked at the two bodyguards and said, Would you gentlemen mind waiting outside for a bit and make sure we are not disturbed? We have some important official business to deal with. Thank you. They both stepped out and closed the door behind them. Carolyn, as you can see, the only ones in this boardroom now are us 3 permanent board members, DFSB trustee Warren Benson, Vance Rayle, whom you've met before, and you. I want you to know that VP Steve Crenshaw has been arrested and charged with a serious crime, so he is no longer a threat to anyone, least of all you. She continued, We are trying to find out some important truths today, and we have already learned a lot. I believe that you know some things that could help us get to the bottom of a few more facts and truths that need to come out. We are all here today to find out the truth. This meeting is being recorded, and everything said will be kept forever. If anyone lies to protect themselves or someone else, it will come out and there will be consequences. Still, Carolyn, I trust you as an honest person, and we are counting on you today. Thank you, Mrs. Redford. I'll do my best to answer your questions. Carolyn, I've heard that Abby Rayle, who works with you, has been taken advantage of by some staff members at DFSB. Do you believe this is true? Yes, ma'am, I do. Can you explain how and when this started? Yes, ma'am. Last year, in mid-November, 6 executive vice presidents, 2 personal assistants, including Abby and myself, went to a team-building retreat in San Francisco. I've worked with these guys for so long that they don't always notice if I overhear them talking about things they wouldn't want me to know. While we were there, I overheard Steve telling others that he got Abby drunk by giving her alcohol and then put a drug called ecstasy in her drinks. He used this to lower her defenses and took advantage of her. He said they took a video and used it to blackmail her to continue seeing them. Vance crossed his arms, clearly upset. He remembered that time vividly and thought Carolyn's story explained Abby's change in behavior after the retreat. Anger was clear on his face. Have you seen any videos like that, Carolyn? No, ma'am. I only overheard the conversation. Do you think this was Abby's only involvement with others at DFSB? No, ma'am. Over the months, I've heard 5 out of the 6 VPs talking about their times with her, usually when she was working late or on weekends. I think they were blackmailing her to keep seeing them. Did Abby ever tell you about these encounters herself? No, ma'am. She may have been too embarrassed or afraid I might accidentally tell her husband, but she often talked to me about how much she loved him. You say 5 of the 6 VPs were involved. Who was not? Walter Kinley. I never heard any talk about him with her. I've known Walter for many years, and he is a man of great character. He goes to church and teaches Sunday school. The other VPs seem to keep their distance from him, probably because he is very honest. I don't think it has anything to do with him being African American. Thank you, Carolyn. Are you aware of an incident involving Abby and several VPs that took place on Friday, May 3rd of this year? Yes, ma'am. Can you tell us what you heard about that day? Yes, ma'am. The guys spoke freely around me since I had never told on them before. They didn't speak directly to me, but they didn't hide their conversations when I was there unless Walter was around. Go on, please. Ma'am, this part is unpleasant, but I'll tell you what I know. Abby wanted to stop their blackmail. They were using her regularly. I heard her begging for release. Steve told her they would give her the embarrassing video to destroy if she agreed to one last night with them. She had to take fertility pills to prepare. Each man would be with her without protection 3 times to see who could get her pregnant. They each put $250,000 into a pool, making $1.5 million total. The man who got her pregnant would win $1 million, and Abby would get the remaining $500,000 to take care of the child. If her husband Vance got her pregnant, she would keep the entire $1.5 million, so each of the 6 men took turns with her that night. That's quite a story, Carolyn, but I see a problem, Camille said. You mentioned only 5 VPs were involved, yet $1.5 million requires 6 contributors. What did I miss? Carolyn looked nervous. Well, you see, in the video... A loud voice cut her off. Just a minute, Damon exclaimed. We've all heard about some mysterious video that only Vance and his lawyer claim to have seen. This has gone on long enough. Everything Carolyn talked about today is just gossip. No court would accept her stories as real proof. Vance's hotel room was checked and there was no video. His laptop was clean. His lawyer was asked to show her copy, but no video there either. They searched everywhere and found nothing. Some even said Vance sent a copy of the video to himself at work. But where is this video? No one has seen it. There were even silly rumors that the vice president's wives got copies of the video. Has any wife shown one? No. Sure, Steve did wrong with the stealing and should face the consequences, but blaming 5 of the 6 respectable vice presidents in our company isn't right. This nonsense needs to end now. Vance looked worried. He thought about what happened to all the videos. Did someone take and destroy them? Warren spoke up. Camille, I respect you a lot, but guessing isn't enough to make these serious accusations. I must agree with Damon unless you have more proof than just hearsay. Warren? Damon? I understand your concerns. If you give me a little more time, I think you'll see it was worth it. If you still think I have wrongly accused anyone after my questions to Carolyn, I will apologize to them personally and in writing. Okay, Camille, Warren said, but let's not waste too much time, all right? Thank you, Camille replied. Damon has a point, Carolyn. I also heard that 5 of the wives got videos showing their husbands' affairs, but none of the wives are showing them. What do you know about that? I heard Steve talk about it with the others. The only way they kept their wives quiet was by giving them everything they wanted in the divorce. This allowed the men to keep their jobs and eventually recover from the losses. Carolyn, are you sure this video exists? Yes, ma'am. I've seen it with my own eyes. I'm so sorry for all this, Mr. Rayle. Carolyn, how did this video come to be? A local private investigator was hired to make it on the mentioned night. Hired? By whom? My son, Ethan Graham. Your son? Why did he hire a private investigator? Ethan graduated from Harvard last year and got a sales job here at DFSB. We talked during dinner about our day. When I told him about Abby and Vance Rayle's troubles, he wanted to help. Vance had helped him a lot in college, and they were fraternity brothers. To pay back Vance, when I told him about the upcoming paternity trap planned for Abby at Annie's Hall, he hired a private investigator at his own cost. They arranged to get a camera inside, and the video was saved online. That's how the video was made. You've seen this video? Yes, ma'am. It's awful to watch. I can imagine. You mentioned 6 men, but only 5 vice presidents in the video. What about the sixth man? The face of the sixth man doesn't appear in the video, but the rest of his body does. And? Camille asked. Damon couldn't take it anymore. Enough! I won't listen to another minute of this nonsense. She's talking about a video that doesn't exist. She's just trying to smear her co-workers and get a raise. That's not true, Carolyn said, opening her purse. I have a copy of the video right here. She showed a set of discs. Damon jumped from his seat as if to take it from her. Guards! Camille called out. Two guards entered quickly and stood by Carolyn as Camille pointed to her. Let's see what we have here, Camille said, putting the DVD into a player and turning on the boardroom's video equipment. She fast-forwarded to a point showing an unidentified naked man with an anchor tattoo as Vance had described when she visited him in jail. Damon slumped back in his seat. Wait, Camille exclaimed. I recognize that tattoo. Damon, remember? On your 21st birthday, we went to a tattoo parlor and you got it. I was with you. Your face isn't on the video, but that tattoo is... Big deal, Damon said defiantly. So I slept with a woman. So what? There's no law against that. You're right, Damon. There's no law against being with a willing woman. But there are two things you missed, she said. Yeah? What? First, even though you reminded us there's no law against what you did, what will your wife and kids think about you being with another woman? She's your sister-in-law, for Pete's sake, and my two girls are your nieces. You wouldn't break up our family over something like this. I know you. You might be right, Damon. I'll have to think about that. But there's another thing you missed. And what's that, dear sister? He hissed. Our father put strong rules in the company to stop any affairs because his marriage ended due to cheating. Those rules are still in place. Anyone breaking them gets fired and cut off from the company forever. We just saw a video of you breaking that rule with a married female coworker. Plus, you admitted it in this board meeting, she added. Warren? Camille asked, looking at him. Warren sighed deeply before replying. She's right, Damon. I love you like a son, but I have to follow the rules. Damon, you are fired from this company, and all your ties with it are cut. Your place on the board is now empty, and you are not employed here anymore. Security, please escort Damon Davenport out of the building. He can't take any keys, cards, or badges with him. His things will be sent to him. Terrence walked over to him. I'm sorry, sir, but you need to leave with us now. Please don't cause a scene. What? That's it? You think you can get rid of me that easy? Damon shouted. I'll sue you all for this. This isn't over. And all because of that bastard Vance? Really? He's nothing. You're going down. You messed with the wrong guy. I'll get you. Do you hear me? I'll get you all. The bodyguards helped Damon out of the boardroom. Once the door closed, the room went silent. Eric Davenport, Camille Redford, Carolyn Graham, Vance Rayle, and Warren Benson looked at each other in disbelief. Warren? Camille said again. Are you sure you want to do this now? He asked. Camille looked at Eric, who said, Yes, Warren. Camille already told me what she thought would happen today. I don't see any reason to wait, do you? No time like the present, Camille agreed. Very well, Warren said. All in favor of making Vance Rayle a full voting partner and one-third owner of Davenport Financial Services and Banking, raise your hands. Eric and Camille raised their hands quickly. Warren, as trustee, had the final vote. After hearing all about this young man and his great work here, even though he's a Rayle, he's also a Davenport. There's no doubt he deserves his place here, but my hands are tied. Vance has to finish his full first year of internship before any changes happen. Camille started. But after all we've heard today, can't we make an exception? Not for a couple more months, Warren said. Your father's will makes no exceptions. I agree that these things needed to be said today, and as much as I want to vote with you, Damon could sue for wrongful process and unseat him if we don't follow the rules. Eric asked. According to my paperwork from Human Resources, Vance started on August 1st last year. That's just under 2 months away. So we can hold a special board meeting on August 1st and make it official then, right? Absolutely, echoed Warren. On that day, I'll raise my hand with yours. But until then, we need to protect Vance. What do you mean? Asked Camille. Damon made threats against Vance. He's your brother, and he doesn't make idle threats. He might try to stop Vance from getting his role here. I suggest providing security for Vance until August 1st. Vance's life changed a lot in just one meeting. He was very happy, but also had to deal with the pain of his wife's betrayal again. Vance said, "I don't know what to say. My life has turned upside down, even my identity, but I have mixed feelings. I really want to get to know my new half-sister and brother. This new journey will change my life completely. Inheriting part of this company is an honor I hope to live up to." It was a big surprise. Now I see how my wife got involved with powerful men here, but she never told me about it from the start. If she had, things might have been different. But that's in the past now. I'd already filed for divorce before knowing all this. I don't want her to take half of my new inheritance when we split. Can I keep working as I have been and not tell Abby until our divorce is done? Camille and Eric looked at Warren. Vance can't officially be offered his 1/3 share until August 1st at the earliest. There's nothing saying that date must be adhered to. If you both agree, he can accept in writing any time after that date. Until then, he can work in any position he currently holds. Eric and Camille nodded in agreement. All right, Vance. You take the time you need to settle things. Just let us know when you're ready, and we'll handle the formal stuff. Until then, you can stay an employee here and choose any job you want. Vance decided, I'll stay in my current job for now so I don't raise any red flags. Abby still thinks she makes double my salary, so she won't ask for alimony. Vance, you know Abby will be fired, right? Not only because she helped frame you, but also because she had affairs with multiple men here. She signed the same no-dating co-workers rule that you did, Camille said. Yeah, I know. But if she loses her job before our divorce is done, she'll sue me for alimony. And what about the men she was with? What happens to them? They will be fired too, now that we have video proof of their actions, Eric answered. Can we delay their firing too? If they lose their jobs and she doesn't, they might claim gender bias and sue the company, Vance suggested. Good point, Eric commented. We could wait until the divorce is finalized, let them think they're safe, and then fire them all at once. Camille added, I can agree to that as long as they're kept in check. Maybe we can give them busy work so they're not causing more trouble until we let them go. Vance looked at his half-siblings. Do our parents know any of this yet? No, Vance, Camille replied. They're good people, and it's up to you to tell them. But once you sign the papers, everyone will know. I'll tell them when the time is right. Does anyone know where my things from the hotel are? While you were in jail, everything was sent to Abby. That's when your video copies went missing, Camille explained. Abby was very upset when you refused her visits at the jail. No surprise there, Vance said sarcastically. I won't go back to the apartment if she's there. I never want to see her again. We have 3 rooms at a hotel across the street, usually for important clients. Why don't you stay in one at no cost until you decide what to do next? Carolyn can arrange it and keep it a secret, Camille offered. Thank you. I may do that, Vance said gratefully. Let's get Carolyn to set you up right away. Do you need cash until you get your things from the apartment? Eric asked. Thanks, but I have enough money from when I was arrested. Just wondering, is Abby at work now? Vance asked. Give me a second, Eric said, making a quick call. Yes, she is. Why? I'll have time to get my things from the apartment while she's at work. There's this ashtray I really like, Vance said with a smile. Have Terrence take you in the limo. It has a large trunk, Camille suggested. Terrence nodded. Vance wanted to stop by the clinic first to get his test results. He was relieved to find out he was clean, though further tests would be needed to confirm everything in the coming months. Abby was very upset without Vance. She begged the jailers to let her visit him, but he refused every time. If only she could talk to him and explain everything, she was sure he would understand, at least a little. Then, they could try to fix what they once had. Yes, she got Vance to sign those papers without knowing their real purpose, as Steve asked her to do. However, she didn't think they would harm him so badly. That's one reason she desperately wanted to see him. She thought about telling the truth, that Vance was framed by Steve. But she feared what Steve and the others might do to her if she turned against them. And Vance knew not only about the videos, but had also given copies to the VP's wives. Her life had been a mess since she got involved with Steve and the others. The blackmail was awful. She feared losing Vance if he saw the video of her with Steve, so she reluctantly gave in to their demands. Over time, she even started to enjoy the attention from the influential men. She knew the truth would come out eventually and Vance would leave her. She pressed them to let her go. The final straw was the dubious pregnancy betting lottery. True to his word, Steve gave her all the videos he used to blackmail her after they tried to get her pregnant. But that same night, Vance found out. How he discovered them and made that video remained a mystery. The biggest shock came when the police arrested Steve for a serious crime. Even the DA was there to announce more charges might come. Did they think Vance was working with Steve? Did they think Steve provided the account number so they could split the money? She planned to visit the jail after work to find out. Even if Vance wouldn't see her, she was sure Steve would, especially since his wife was divorcing him. Carolyn had been out running special errands for the board today. Maybe she heard something about what was happening. Later that evening, the jailers told her all charges against Vance had been dropped, and he was released earlier. That was surprising, but great news. She badly wanted to talk to him. Maybe he would be waiting at the apartment. Since she was already at the jail, she asked to see Steve to find out what he knew. He didn't know Vance was freed. Learning that worried him more than being suspected of working with Vance. He had arranged for a lawyer but wouldn't see him until the next morning. So Steve couldn't tell her why Vance was released, and he was charged. One thing that gave Abby hope was that if Steve went to prison and Vance was free, the chances of any more blackmail were low, and she might have a chance to mend things with Vance. Abby rushed home from her visit with Steve to check if Vance was at the apartment. No Vance, but he had been there. She saw his clothes and toiletries were gone, along with his beloved ashtray. She never understood why he liked it so much, but he took it to the hotel. Maybe it had sentimental value. She thought he might have checked into the same hotel again. She should check there. She had important news for him. Vance was soon contacted by Carolyn. She had booked room 1423 at the Luxor Hotel under her son Ethan Graham's name. Ethan got the room key and left it in an envelope for Vance at the front desk. This kept Vance's name off the hotel records. The hotel bill was covered monthly, so no credit card would give him away. Vance appreciated the privacy. The Luxor was much nicer than the run-down place he stayed before. It didn't take long for Vance to settle into the new hotel. Going back to the apartment he shared with Abby to collect his things brought back many memories, good and bad. Unfortunately, the bad outweighed the good. His head was still spinning from the latest events. His half-siblings asked him to dinner, but he declined, saying he needed some time alone. He was relieved to be free, but had faith that the truth would come out. One thing he did know was that he wanted to thank Ethan Graham personally. He planned to repay him for the private investigator at the very least. He found it ironic that he once disliked the fraternity, but now he was thankful for the Brotherhood's help. Conrad Davenport, Vance's real father and mentor, was indeed a smart man. Vance didn't want to sit around all day doing nothing. He went back to work the very next day. He asked for Feldman, who worked with Terrence as a bodyguard. Camille said Terrence did a lot of driving and guarding for them, but they could spare Feldman for as long as Vance needed him. Vance got a comfy chair and put it outside his basement office. Feldman had clear orders. Don't let anyone in to see Vance or even knock on his door without Vance's okay. Feldman was to text Vance the names of anyone wanting to come in and reject them if Vance didn't approve, no matter who they were with the company. Of course, Camille and Eric could come in anytime they wanted. Albert stayed away from Vance. He knew something serious was up after being called to the boardroom the previous day, and he didn't want to get involved. Abby called Albert to ask if he had seen Vance around. He said he had, but was avoiding him since Vance had been in jail, and he didn't want to get tangled in anything bad. Abby was happy her husband was back at work and called him right away. He didn't answer, so she went to his office. She was surprised to see a big man outside Vance's door, but tried to go in anyway. Feldman stopped her and asked her name and why she was there. He texted Vance, and Vance said no. Abby then went to Frank Sutton, one of the top VPs, and told him Vance was back. Frank worried about what Vance might say, especially since Vance was the one who almost ruined things with the videos. Frank went to Vance's office himself to talk. Feldman also turned him away. Frank angrily threatened Feldman, saying he'd have him fired if he didn't move. Mad, Frank called security and told them to remove Feldman and fire him for disobeying. Security put him on hold for a couple of minutes, then apologized. They said they couldn't do anything about Feldman and he was just doing his job. Frank was confused about how Vance could have a bodyguard and why even a VP couldn't see him. The only thing that made sense was that Vance had just got out of jail. Maybe he could work, but needed a bodyguard for protection. Stunned, Frank went back to his office with no answers, only more questions. That night, Vance had dinner at Camille's home. Eric's family was there too. Everyone got introduced. Vance was happy to have new family connections. It was a real bonding moment. Camille apologized a lot for how she had treated him before the boardroom meeting. She and Eric admitted they were wrong and felt bad for misjudging him. They had let him and their father down. A nice surprise for Vance was seeing Carolyn Graham and her husband William. He greeted Carolyn warmly and thanked her for all she had done for him. He looked William in the eye and said, "Take good care of this one, William. She's very special." "Don't I know it?" William replied. Just then, Ethan, their son, appeared, and Vance recognized him. "Bubbles!" Vance exclaimed, shaking Ethan's hand. "Now I know who you are. When your mom said her son Ethan knew me and wanted to help, I couldn't put a face to the name. I forgot you even had a real name," Vance joked. "Man," Ethan replied, "I was hoping to leave that nickname behind at Harvard. You're the first to call me that in a while." "Bubbles?" asked Carolyn. "I never heard that one. What's the story?" She looked curious. "Can I tell her?" Vance asked Ethan, offering to save him some embarrassment. "Oh, you might as well. She'll bug me till I tell her anyway," Ethan replied. "Well," Vance began, "we were in a study group for a trigonometry course, if I remember right. A girl Ethan dated called him Bubbles, and he got all embarrassed, so we bugged her until she told us why. Apparently, while they were in a bathtub, Ethan passed some gas, and Bubbles came up through the soapy water. The smell was so bad it drove her out of the room. Since then, everybody called him Bubbles," Vance recalled with a laugh. Everyone chuckled, trying not to laugh too hard at Ethan's expense. Yeah, I'm used to it. I don't mind my friends knowing that, but I'd rather leave that nickname behind at work," Ethan said. "Ethan, for all you've done for me, I'll call you anything you like," Vance praised. "Ethan will be just fine from now on," he replied. "Ethan it is, then. Oh, by the way," Vance remembered, "I want to pay you back for the private investigator you hired for me." "Brother, I have to say you saved my life." Ethan thought for a moment. "How about this? I'll share the cost with you. You helped me a lot in college with your tips and explanations. I wouldn't have made it through without you. If I let you pay everything, it won't feel right. Deal?" "Deal," Vance said, though not too happily. "You drive a hard bargain, brother," he added with a smile. After their meal, Eric and Camille asked Vance about meeting Abby. They said if he didn't see her, she might fight the divorce and make things take longer. Vance thought about it and realized they were right. He promised to talk to her on Friday evening. Abby really wanted him to come to the apartment to talk. Vance didn't want to. Instead, he chose a nice public restaurant to avoid too much drama. Abby arrived on time, looking very nice. She hoped to make him feel something for her again. "Thanks for meeting me, Vance. You look good. It's been too long. I'm happy to hear all the charges against you were dropped." "You look great too, Abby. I can see why all the VPs wanted you so much." "That hurts, Vance, and I deserve it. But I don't want to fight. I'm here to say I'm willing to do anything for you to come back home." "Okay, Abby, let's stop fighting and talk calmly to solve this. Mind if I ask, what's with the bodyguard?" "Oh, you've met Feldman. The bosses thought I should have some protection after getting out of jail. They want to make sure nothing bad happens to anyone while I'm at work." "Where are you staying now, Vance? Can you tell me?" "Not right now. Maybe later." "I love you, Vance. I know it's hard to believe, but it's true. I was tricked and forced to do things. I was scared to lose you, so I did what they wanted. That night you came to get me was the last time I had anything to do with them. I wanted to be with you alone. Can you forgive me and come back?" "I hear you, Abby, and I believe you, but it's too much for me to get over. I'm sorry, but we're young. We can find new people and start over." "Don't say that, Vance, please. I don't want anyone else. I want you." "It's not just about cheating, Abby. There are other issues." "Like what?" "Well, one big thing was your betrayal and lies. You tricked me into signing fake papers. You made me think it was insurance, but it was a new bank account." Abby cried. "You're right. I hated doing that to you. I didn't know what they were planning." "Then why did you do it?" "Steve said it was just a threat to keep you quiet if you found out, but you didn't wait. You told their wives right away. Why?" So you're on their side? No. I'm saying things might be different if you talk to them first. Did you know all 5 wives filed for divorce? I heard. You think I should have talked to them, like they talked to me before hurting our marriage? There's more than that, Abby. What else? You treated me badly. Did they tell you to do that too? Did they force you to call me a nobody because you earned more money? Did they make you threaten to have me fired? I didn't mean those things. I was just frustrated. I wanted us to have a special day together. It felt real to me. Did you know Steve talked to me after our fight? He told me to make you happy. I didn't know. He was just looking out for me. Is that why you told him all our personal stuff? Abby, too much has happened. Just sign the divorce papers and let's end this nicely. Abby looked worried. I'm really sorry, Vance. I'm begging for your forgiveness. I'll do anything. I believe you're sorry, but an apology won't fix us. It's too late. Honey, there's something else I haven't told you. I wanted to, but you wouldn't see me. Abby took a deep breath and looked straight at Vance. I needed to tell you this face to face. It's too big to keep secret, no matter how we both feel. I'm pregnant. Vance just stared at her, showing no emotion. Isn't that great news? We talked about this so much, having a baby, becoming parents. This could bring us back together, don't you see? Aren't you going to say something? Who's the father? Vance asked coldly. She beams. You are. This is our baby. We'll love and care for it together, no matter how it got here. Don't you see? How can it be mine? We haven't been together. Don't say that. With what we both make, plus a little extra I might get, we can give our baby the best life. Please come home. I know about the PG program you're working on. The Paternity Gambit program that pays based on who fathers your baby. Abby's tears streamed down her face. She had no good response to that. Look, Abby, I've read up on it. There's a pregnancy test to find out who the father is. We just need a blood sample from both of us. The results come back in about a week. Here's the appointment card. It's Tuesday at 10 a.m. I've already given my sample. Don't miss it. Abby looked down, feeling small. But if it's not ours, I mean yours and mine together, how would we know who... If I'm not the father, then I don't care who is. It's your baby, Vance. I just know it. Just don't miss the appointment, Abby. Until then, have a nice weekend. Vance got up and left the restaurant. This wasn't how she pictured their meeting would go after that wild night. She knew if they were to get back together, it all depended on the test results. She hoped Vance was the father as tears fell onto her plate. Abby went back to her lonely apartment. It felt empty, no more love or excitement. She still had her job and made twice as much as Vance, but her days were joyless without him. There was no one to share her success or raise the baby with. Abby was relieved to be free from Steve and the others, but at a cost. If the baby was one of theirs, she'd have a big paycheck. But if it was Vance's, she'd get even more. Either way, she knew she would have her baby. Steve had told her all the copies of the video were gone, except for ones the wives had. They couldn't use them by divorce terms. Vance's memory was the biggest hurdle, but she believed she could replace bad memories with good ones if he let her. Abby went to the appointment and gave her blood sample. The sooner she knew the truth, the better. Damon Davenport needed to talk with his partners about getting back his place in the company, which his father had meant for him to have. He had a plan to get his job back, but needed help with some details. He wanted the vice presidents to meet at his home to discuss it. They needed to be sneaky and brave, but these were not shy men. During the meeting, some men suggested telling Abby about Vance's upcoming promotion to use her greed to distract him, making her seek reconciliation. Damon said no. He knew that would make her more loyal to Vance. Instead, he had a backup plan. He told them to make Abby feel superior to Vance by reminding her of her achievements compared to his. This way, Vance might get disgusted and quit before his year at the company ended. A young college girl, just 20 years old and very pretty, was hired for a special task. She was quietly brought into the DFSB building and given a cart full of snacks to push around. Her job was to approach the man sitting outside office 0037. She walked up to him wearing a blue miniskirt and a blue satin top. She smiled as she moved closer. She said she was new and hadn't made any sales yet. She offered him a free blueberry muffin and a canned drink to try out if he would tell others about her goods. She ate a muffin with him as he accepted her offer. She was being paid $200 to get him to accept a particular muffin and $500 if he ate it all. She made him laugh and took her time to make sure he finished it. She had no idea why she was doing this, but she was happy to earn the money. When he was done, she walked away and was taken out of the building with her cash. What neither she nor the big man knew was that the muffin had 3 crushed sleeping pills in it. Within 15 minutes, he fell asleep in his chair. After another 45 minutes, 3 men in coveralls showed up with a large cardboard box on a hand truck. One of the men walked to the corner to make sure no one else was coming. Another man put chloroform on a cloth. The third man used a master key to unlock the door to Vance's office while the big man slept. The 2 men rushed into the office and surprised Vance. They quickly tied his arms behind his back and put the chloroform cloth over his mouth until he passed out. Albert, in the office across the hall, heard a noise. Curious, he opened his door a tiny bit and turned off his lights so no one would see him. The 2 men put Vance in a fetal position in the box and taped it shut. They then tilted the box back onto the hand truck. Albert saw them looking both ways before leaving Vance's office with the box. Albert heard one of the men whisper, "Hurry! Let's get him to the loading dock before anyone sees us. Damon's going to be mad if we're late." They pushed the box down the hall like they were making a regular delivery. Though Albert never saw a third man, he recognized the 2 he did see, Frank Sutton and Bernard Ledbetter, both Division VPs. Craig Barstow, the Division VP over DFSB's banking sector, convinced Carolyn to have lunch with him, saying he needed her to plan some events. She agreed, though she knew him to be one of the 5 from the video. Despite her feelings, she had to do her job. She hoped their day of reckoning would come soon. During lunch, Carolyn didn't trust Craig. She was always careful not to eat anything that could be tampered with. Craig found her caution amusing. Despite her efforts to stay safe, today she wouldn't escape. Today was payback. After lunch, Carolyn and Craig got into his car. As she was putting on her seatbelt, someone got in the back seat before Craig could drive away. "Hi there, Carolyn," said a voice she knew. "Mind if I join you two?" "Philip, what are you doing here?" Carolyn asked, nervous now. She was alone in a car with 2 VPs from the video. She thought Philip Harmon was a creep and tried to avoid him. "I hope you don't mind if I join you 2 lovebirds," Philip joked. "I saw the car and thought I'd get a ride back to the office. My client had to leave suddenly because of a family emergency. But I need to make a call and my battery is dead. Carolyn, can I use your phone for a moment?" She hesitated but then handed it to him. He turned it off and put it in his pocket. He used his own phone to make a call. "It's me. Right. We're on our way. Maybe 15 minutes. No, everything's cool so far." "Okay." He hung up. "What's going on? Who was that?" "I want my phone back," Carolyn said. Philip replied. "Calm down, Carolyn. Everything will be fine. We just need to make a quick stop. It won't take long, I promise." "You're scaring me. Where are we going, Craig? This isn't the way to the office. What's happening? Give me my phone back," she shouted. Philip angrily said, "Carolyn, if you don't calm down, I'll make you calm down. Trust me, you don't want that. I have a stun gun here." He showed her the sparking stun gun. "If you don't be quiet, I'll use it and you'll be out. Do you understand?" Carolyn began to tremble with fear. She knew this was a bad situation, but she stayed quiet, hoping for a chance to escape. They were far from other people on the edge of town. Albert was worried and unsure of what to do. About half an hour earlier, he thought he saw someone getting taken away against their will, but he wanted to be sure before doing anything. He checked on Feldman, tapping his shoulder and poking his chest. Feldman was out cold, breathing heavily but unconscious. Albert then opened Vance's office door. It was empty, just as he guessed. He didn't know what to do. If he made too much noise about this, the bosses could fire him or cause him a lot of trouble. But he liked Vance and knew Vance would help him if things were the other way around. Finally, Albert called security and told them about Vance's possible kidnapping and Feldman's condition. 3 security officers and Terrence arrived quickly. Terrence slapped Feldman hard in the face a few times, waking him up. Albert repeated what he saw to everyone there. Feldman was upset that he had let his guard down. He still felt a bit sleepy and thought the food cart girl had tricked and drugged him, which made him both embarrassed and angry. Terrence asked Feldman, "What do we do? Where could Vance be? Where would the bosses have taken him?" Feldman quickly answered, I don't know, but I know how to find out. Remember that pen we gave him? It has a GPS chip we can track with an app on my phone. Terrence, you'll have to drive, and I'll tell you where to go. Gene Tuttle, the security chief, jumped in. You're not going anywhere without us, he said firmly. He then called for a Suburban to be ready at the loading dock. They all got in and quickly drove towards the tracking signal. On the way, Gene called the police, saying they thought Vance Rayle had been kidnapped. But the place was far on the other side of town. It would take a while to get there. When Vance woke up, his head was cloudy. He realized he was lying on a bed, tied up. A rope was around his ankles, keeping his legs together and connected to the bed frame. His arms were stretched out and handcuffed to the headboard. He couldn't move much at all. As his vision cleared, he looked around the shabby room. It was definitely not a fancy place. He saw the three men in the room with him, Damon Davenport, Frank Sutton, and Bernard Ledbetter. These were three of the 6 men who had humiliated his wife and ruined his marriage. He remembered being knocked out by Frank and Bernard. They had brought him here somehow. What's going on? Vance demanded. So nice of you to join us, Mr. Rayle, Damon sneered. Keep your mouth shut. We'll explain everything soon. I see our other special guest has just arrived, he said as Frank opened the door. A very scared and nervous-looking Carolyn Graham walked in, followed by Craig Barstow and Philip Harmon. It was obvious she wasn't there by choice. With the exception of Steve Crenshaw, who was in jail, the other men who had hurt his wife were all there. Craig picked up a small camera from a nearby dresser, turned it on, and started recording. Damon began, Good. Looks like we're all here. Steve will enjoy watching this later. Welcome, Carolyn and Vance. You two are our special guests and are about to star in your own video. Carolyn started crying. No! Vance gritted his teeth. You'll never get away with this. Why are you doing this? Damon nodded to Philip, who stepped forward and activated a stun gun in front of Vance's face. The crackling sound was loud and menacing. One more outburst and Philip will use this on you. It hurts a lot for a few seconds until you pass out. Some people even die from it. As long as you both cooperate, we'll keep it away. You have my word on that. What do you want from us? Vance asked. Not much. Like I said, you two are going to make a very explicit video for us. But why? You've already hurt my wife. Why make us do this? Damon explained. Don't worry, we have our reasons. Carolyn, did you think you could betray us and get away with it? You're the only one who knew what we were doing with Abby that night. Even though nobody directly told you, we figured out that you must have heard things you shouldn't have. As a longtime personal assistant, you should know that keeping secrets is a big part of the job. That video exists because of you. And now you must face the consequences. Don't worry, you will still have your job, but you are under strict watch from now on. He went on. And as for you, you worthless scumbag, I've hated you since I knew you existed. Your birth messed up my family, making life terrible for Camille, Eric, and me. That was bad enough, but then you tried to mess with our lives and take what was never yours. And that wasn't enough for you, right? You sent copies of that cursed video to the 5 wives, destroying 5 families. You couldn't talk to us like an adult. If you had worked with us, we could have made you rich. But no, you sent that video out without thinking. Damon continued. And then to top it off, your foolish actions got me fired, and now you're trying to take my inheritance. Steve is in jail, and you need to listen carefully. You are going to make things right, and we will make sure you are motivated to do so. You two are going to be recorded in an intimate act right here and now. When I'm satisfied with the recording, I will use it to make you do what I want. If that video gets out, both of you will be fired, just like me. Vance, after today, you will do everything to get me reinstated, or you will end up like me. Carolyn, not only would you be fired for breaking company rules, but your husband and son will get copies of the video. I'm sure they would love to see you with another man. Maybe your marriage will suffer like the other men's. Karma is a tough lesson, isn't it? Damn you, Damon, Vance cursed. You won't get away with this. We will testify that you kidnapped us and forced this. Testify? We have 10 witnesses each who will say we are 20 miles away while you two have your secret meeting. It will look like you paid a homeless man to record your private encounter. And we just happened to find a copy. Carolyn fearfully asked, Why do you think either of us would willingly give you something to use against us? Good question, Damon said. 2 reasons. 1, I can shock the pair of you until you cooperate. 2, let me ask you this. What if I have a friend who is a client of DFSB? What if this client has your son, Ethan, with him right now? And what if I made a call and Ethan were brought here and hurt in front of you? Do I need to say more? Carolyn's eyes filled with tears and anger. Don't you dare touch him. Not my son, not Ethan. I'll do whatever you say, just leave him out of this. That's what I wanted to hear. There's a good girl, let's get this started. Carolyn, take off your clothes. Bernard, since you're close, pull down the covers off our young friend here, just down to his calves. We don't want the ropes to show in the video. Frank, put some pillows over Vance's hands and wrists, then put one under his head. We don't want the handcuffs to show. Make it look like he's just relaxed on the bed. Philip, turn on all the lights. We want clear images. Craig, you're the camera guy. Move around and make sure everything is clear. I want to get this done in one take, but we'll redo it if needed until I'm satisfied. We're making a private version, but I want you to record everything for Steve since he can't be here. It'll be the next best thing. Carolyn sadly removed her clothes. She had avoided this group's terrible actions for as long as she worked at DFSB. Now she had to give in because she helped Vance at her son's request. The saying, "No good deed goes unpunished," was not lost on her. Being mature, she was very self-conscious about being naked. No man other than her husband or doctor had seen her naked in 25 years, and now she had to act in front of 5 depraved men with a young man her son's age. But she knew that if she didn't do it, Ethan would suffer. She had no choice and no escape with 5 captors. All right, you two, Damon instructed. Listen closely. We need to get this right the first time. If you mess up, we will repeat it until it's perfect. I don't want to keep giving directions while you two are together. So I'm telling you everything now. The most important thing is that whenever your face is on camera, it must show strong emotions. One wrong look, and we start over. I also need to hear sounds that match what you're doing. It should sound real, not fake. Carolyn, Vance is tied up and can't move much. He's tied up this way for safety, so you need to do all the work and use his body. He continued, when I say action, I will not say anything else. You will go to him, kiss him deeply, and get both of you excited. Then, you need to give him the best oral you can. Once you start doing that, turn your body around so that you're on top of his face. Let him pleasure you too. Vance, you need to do your best to pleasure her like it's the last time for you. Craig will get close-up shots of both of you. When you hear me snap my fingers, turn back around and sit on him facing him. If you're not ready, there's gel on the bed you can use. Use it to make it easier to join your bodies. Damon went on. Then lean over and let him touch and kiss your chest. Vance, you need to do this just like you saw before. Carolyn, next, you must give it your all. Make him finish inside you, making sure to get every bit. After that, let his tired body separate from yours. Craig will get shots of what's left. Carolyn, you don't have to reach your own finish, but you must make it look like you did. Got that? Asked Damon. She nodded sadly. She looked over at Vance, who was tied up, knowing she was being forced into this. I'm so sorry, Vance. I don't know what else to do, Ethan. Vance interrupted her. It's okay, Carolyn. Do what you need to do and I'll help. For Ethan. For Ethan, she repeated. Damon eagerly said, Everyone sit down and stay out of the way. Craig needs space to move the camera. Now here's what I've been waiting to say. Lights, camera, action. As she approached the bed, Vance, a strong young man, glanced at Carolyn, a beautiful older woman trying hard not to stare. It was awkward and uncomfortable for them both. They did not dislike each other, but they would not be this close if not forced. They had to put aside their feelings to avoid something worse. Vance knew he had to help his friends many times before, and now he had to take his turn. He looked at her beauty, showing her age, but still graceful. Her body had felt the effects of time, and her dark skin glistened in the light. Vance had never been this close to a black woman before. Neither of them felt any excitement now, but they knew they had to act passionate or go through this again and again. Carolyn lay down beside Vance, brought her face close to his, and tried to show feelings for the camera. She touched his chest, exploring his body. Her lips met his, and they kissed deeply. Her hand moved down to his private part, touching it gently. It was soft and different from what she was used to. She kissed him more intensely, their tongues meeting warmly. She wrapped her hand around him, trying to make him ready. Her touches were expert, using her life experience. She moved her hand along him, trying to make him respond. She could hear Craig moving, capturing everything. Carolyn and Vance both closed their eyes. They wanted to block out the fact that 5 bad men were watching them. She didn't understand what was happening to her. Security Chief Gene Tuttle pulled the bedspread around Carolyn, helping her off the bed. Not waiting for the keys, Feldman broke the headboard to free Vance. Vance slowly pulled his sore arms back, feeling a bit better. Feldman untied his ankles and helped him up, covering him with a sheet. The bodyguards and security staff quickly restrained the 5 kidnappers as the police arrived to take over and arrest them. Once Carolyn and Vance cleaned up and dressed, Vance spoke to the lead officer. "My name is Vance Rayle. I'll soon be one of the main shareholders of Davenport Financial Services and Banking. It is very important that no one sees the video on that camera except the DA. It has evidence of kidnapping, assault, and attempted assault by these men. I want to make sure her modesty is protected." The officer nodded. "I'll handle it personally, sir. I understand the sensitivity of this matter. Once it's logged into evidence, I'll take it directly to the DA." "Thank you, officer. I really appreciate it," Vance replied. Feldman approached Vance, who shook his hand warmly. "I'm sorry it took us so long to get here, sir. I was fooled by a pretty face, and I'm very angry at myself right now." "You couldn't have known what they were planning, Feldman. No one could," Vance said. "What tipped you guys off?" "Albert saw you being kidnapped. It took him almost an hour to tell me, but he called security right after. Otherwise, we would have been here sooner. Remember the pen I gave you? It has a GPS tracker inside. That's how we found you." "Good old Albert, huh?" "Yes, sir. Even though he delayed, if he hadn't seen it and reported it, these men might have succeeded. Mrs. Graham didn't deserve what she went through, but at least it was stopped before it got worse. I'm glad you used the tracker. I thought it was too much at first, but now I'm grateful you did." "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Let's get you and Mrs. Graham away from here. Where to, sir?" "Thank you, Feldman. Let's take Mrs. Graham home first, all right? Then you can drop me at my hotel so I can shower and clean up." "Yes, sir. Right away, sir." Carolyn and Vance exchanged knowing looks. They now shared a bond born out of violence and coercion, yet they did not see what they had endured together as disgusting or shameful. It was a comforting moment where 2 people became close while facing a huge danger together. Carolyn gave Vance a thankful hug. She looked up at him with tears in her eyes and said, "Vance." But Vance cut her off. "Don't worry, Carolyn. Other than the small bit we might need to say at the trial, we won't talk about what happened today ever again." More tears filled Carolyn's eyes as she said, "Thank you, Vance. Ethan was right to trust you. You have a good heart." Eric and Camille were shocked and upset that Damon and the managers did such terrible things. The managers were fired right away, and the company promised to help the police. The company also made it clear they wouldn't help the managers with their legal problems. After talking to the police, they found no proof that Abby Rayle knew anything or helped in any way. Since Abby wasn't involved, Vance asked that she keep her job until the divorce was final. Then, she would be fired for breaking the company's policy against relationships with co-workers and wouldn't get any of Vance's money. With the danger now lessened, Feldman didn't need to protect Vance at work, but he still walked Vance to his hotel room across the street each night, since the accused were out on high bail. A judge ordered them to stay 500 feet away from Vance, or they would lose their bail. The company paid for Carolyn to get therapy since the attack happened at work. They offered therapy to Vance, too, but he politely turned it down. He was focused on his divorce. Vance wanted a quick and easy divorce, so he could move on with his life. He found out that mediation can make divorces faster, which is what he wanted, but he needed Abby to agree to a simple divorce, which takes about 3 months in New York if both sides agree. Abby didn't know about Vance's new connections with the Davenports and the money it would bring him. Even if she knew, nothing was finalized yet, so Vance could still say he was an intern making $50,000 a year. Damon, Abby's brother, was busy trying to get out of the legal mess he was in and still saw Abby as his backup plan. Vance knew he wouldn't have a relationship with his half-brother. He thought about sending Damon's wife a video to help her with her divorce, but decided not to hurt Damon's relationship with his kids any more than it was already. Abby emailed Vance saying she had the paternity test results and wanted to meet soon if he was available. She asked for a private meeting at their apartment to keep some information between them. Although Vance didn't want to meet, he needed her to agree to a simple divorce. So he acted friendly and set up a meeting for that night. Abby wanted to cook for him, but Vance knew she wasn't a good cook, so he offered to bring takeout at 7 p.m. As expected, Abby was dressed fancily in a black dress and heels, wearing his favorite perfume. She thought she could win him back. She was very sorry that the men she had been involved with before had taken part in his and Carolyn's kidnapping. She promised she didn't know about it and hadn't seen those men since things fell apart. They ate and talked about the past, the present, and what Abby hoped would be their future. Abby could tell Vance was just being polite. Vance tried to stay calm. No matter what the paternity test said, he wanted a divorce. "Honey, I wanted to tell you the results in person. Even though you are not the father, this is still our baby. From the moment this child is born, you will be the only father it knows. This is a good thing, a chance to get closer than ever." Vance looked at her without showing any emotion. He felt relieved that they wouldn't have to stay in each other's lives after the divorce, but he knew he had to pretend to be supportive to get the quick divorce he wanted. He kept quiet while she kept talking. "The best part is, we will raise this baby together. And guess what? The jerks who led me astray that night are feeling guilty. They've put together $500,000 to help us. Can you believe it? This will give our baby the best start. Isn't that amazing?" she said happily. "Abby, I understand your positive outlook, but after all that's happened, I can't get past it. The money will be helpful for," he started to say, but she cut him off. "Oh, now you want to talk about the money? You can't forgive me, but you can take the money? Is it because I make twice what you do? Come on, admit it." Vance felt his anger rising, but he tried to stay calm. "Quick divorce," he thought to himself repeatedly. Vance said calmly, "The fact that you say that proves I'm not the right man for you, Abby. You deserve someone who is your equal, not someone you look down on. Let's agree on the terms and—" "Listen, if you think you're getting any of that $500,000, forget it. I was giving you a chance to be a man, a father, and a good husband, but you only care about the money." "What?" he gasped. "You heard me," she said angrily. "If you can't admit you are a loser who let a better man give your wife a better child, then you sure won't get any of my hard-earned money. If you want a divorce, fine, but if you leave with nothing. No alimony. And don't think you can come back to me later. When you're begging on the street, remember what you threw away. You had a good life with me, but I won't support a loser." It was hard for Vance to contain his excitement. Her words meant nothing to him. He saw how selfish she really was, and felt glad he learned this before wasting more time. He tried to look sad but couldn't manage it. If he smiled, it would ruin the terms she'd just agreed to. So he stayed calm. "You're right, Abby. You deserve it all, and I deserve nothing. I'll agree to your terms. No alimony, even though you earn double what I do. I'll make do with my small salary and let you find someone worthy. Maybe one of the 5 former VPs. "Smart ass. You'll regret leaving me," she said angrily. As Vance left her apartment for the last time, he felt great. He couldn't be prouder of himself for staying silent to speed up the divorce. She was giving him a quick, easy divorce as long as he took nothing else. He had his ashtray and his future, and he was no longer sad she wouldn't be in it. He asked his lawyer to rework the divorce papers the next day and had 4 copies sent for her to sign. The person delivering them was also a notary, who reported back that she complained a lot about Vance, but she did sign the papers. Now he just had to wait 90 days for the final court papers ending their marriage. Vance hoped nothing would mess up the process. He wouldn't let her lose her job until after the divorce was official. Camille, Eric, and Warren worked on filling the 5 empty VP spots left by the accused kidnappers and Steve. Besides the serious charges, they had enough proof of rule-breaking to replace them. It took 2 weeks of interviews to fill the positions. Walter Kinley kept a good reputation during all this and was kept in the dark by the others because of his strong beliefs. He was given Steve's lead VP position and a higher salary for his honesty and loyalty. 4 positions were filled by staff within the company. They were not involved in any wrongdoings. The last position was filled by someone from outside the company. A headhunter said she was going to be a great addition and had just the right experience they needed. A month after the kidnapping, Feldman wasn't seen with Vance at work anymore because the kidnappers were all fired and couldn't get into the building. But Feldman kept checking on Vance because he still felt bad for being tricked so easily before. He promised himself nothing would happen to Vance again while he was around. One mid-morning, Feldman decided to visit Vance for fun. As he turned the corner to Vance's office in the basement, he saw a snack cart outside the closed door. This shocked him a lot. He ran as fast as he could. Knowing Vance's office door locked when closed, he didn't bother knocking. He crashed through the door with his strong right shoulder like a battering ram. Inside, he saw the same pretty girl from before who had somehow gotten into Vance's office. Without stopping, Feldman tackled Vance to the floor just as Vance was about to eat a hot apple pastry. The girl quickly ran away. "What the heck?" Vance yelled, confused. Feldman got up fast and said, "Don't eat that, it could be poisoned. Stay here, I'm going after her." He ran out the door. Feldman saw the girl heading for the loading dock door. He chased after her, yelling at a delivery man near the door to stop her. The man blocked her until Feldman caught up and grabbed her. The girl cried nonsense as Feldman called security. She was taken to the security office. Gene Tuttle, the head of security, called the cafeteria supervisor to see if she was allowed in the building. The supervisor did not recognize her and checked on all snack cart staff. All were accounted for. She was unknown. Feldman told Gene what happened. So Gene called the district attorney, DA, to file a trespassing complaint and to hold her until the snack could be tested. Due to earlier events, the DA agreed and detained her for questioning. The girl stayed quiet and gave the officers a business card of her lawyer. The DA sent the pastry to the lab for testing. Within hours, the lab found the pastry was full of a dangerous drug called succinylmethonium chloride. This drug can paralyze the whole body, including the breathing muscles, leading to death. This drug is hard to detect after it's consumed, but the large amount in the pastry was easily found. After 3 days of tough questioning, the girl admitted who she was. She confessed to trying to poison Vance, just like she had tried with Feldman. She claimed she didn't know it was lethal. She thought it would just make him sleep. She was paid $1,000 to deliver it. As part of a plea deal, she got 1 year of probation and 200 hours of community service for giving names. She said a group of men arranged for her to enter the building, but she only knew one name: Damon. She could identify the men if she saw them. All involved were kept in jail until their trials. Later, Vance, Terrence, and Feldman were having lunch in the cafeteria. Vance asked, "Feldman, how did you stop me from eating that poisoned apple turnover the other day?" Feldman looked unhappy as he remembered. He said, "After the kidnapping, I was really hard on myself. I promised Camille and Eric that no one would get to you again on my watch. I made sure to stay close by, even if you didn't know it. I'm sorry I had to tackle you so hard, but I saw that card and knew you were in danger. I had to do something." Vance patted Feldman on the shoulder. "I'm really grateful you did. If it means saving my life, you can tackle me any time." He laughed. On August 25th, Vance got a hand-delivered copy of his divorce decree. The judge had signed it that morning. He felt both happy and sad. Happy to be free from a cheating wife, but sad because he lost someone who was once his best friend. When they first came to New York, life seemed full of good things. Now, because of Abby and her bad choices, everything felt ruined. On September 1st, there was a special board meeting. 2 Davenports, Trustee Warren Benson, and 6 new vice presidents were there. The meeting was all about Vance Rayle. Camille started the meeting right away. "A lot has changed since we were last here. Thanks to Vance Rayle, we were able to get rid of the bad part of our company. Now, it's time to fix the missing piece and make Vance a full partner," she said. Camille continued, "Today I ask that we make Vance Rayle a full voting partner and owner of 1/3 of Davenport Financial Services and Banking. All in favor, please raise your hands." Eric and Camille quickly raised their hands, and Warren did too. Vance looked around and saw that everyone had their hands up. "Let the record show it's a unanimous decision. Vance, you are now officially one of us, and we are very proud to have you," said Eric. Warren added, "My role as trustee is now over. Every part of your father's will has been fulfilled. The 3 of you are now equal partners. "Vance, welcome to the family." Everyone applauded loudly. Camille and Eric hugged Vance. He was too moved to say much, so he simply hoped to prove himself worthy in the future. 2 days later, Abby was called to the executive conference room. She entered feeling unsure and saw Carolyn with a serious look on her face. "What's going on, Carolyn? Why was I called here?" Abby asked. "Abby, help yourself to the snacks on the table. The board asked me to update you on many changes at DFSB since your divorce. You will have questions, but please wait until I'm done," said Carolyn. "I was chosen to talk to you because we've worked together as PAs. I'm sorry to bring this up, but I need to share personal and difficult information about your time here. Vance wanted me to tell you everything to avoid bringing up painful memories for him," Carolyn explained. She then covered every detail about what had happened since Abby joined. It took nearly 45 minutes. Abby was shocked. She learned she was part of a plan by her bosses to cause trouble in her marriage. She cried when she found out that much of Vance's intended salary had been given to her to create conflict. She already knew about the kidnapping and extortion, but seeing everything together was overwhelming. As she realized the full extent of her mistakes and how she had been used against Vance, she felt crushed. When she found out about Vance's real identity, she got sick. She saw clearly how badly she had failed as his wife. If she had been honest with him, their lives would have been very different. Carolyn then gave Abby her termination letter for breaking the company's rules. Abby fell to the floor in despair. The final blow came when she learned that this same scheme had happened before with another PA, Donna Griggs. What Abby didn't know was that the guys were just playing a mean game. Once Donna found out she was pregnant and it wasn't her husband's baby, they all disappeared. She got no money and her husband left her. It was her word against theirs, and they hired expensive lawyers to block any DNA tests. Donna moved to another state in shame, broke and embarrassed. She gave the baby up for adoption. Meanwhile, Carolyn did her best to comfort Abby, who was her co-worker and friend. But in the end, Abby had to leave her job, carrying all her things with her. Vance gave Carolyn a big promotion and a pay raise. With Camille's and Eric's permission, he gave her a special gift, an ashtray that had a deep meaning. Carolyn was very loyal to Vance until she retired, protecting him like a mother bear. She would do anything for him, but they always kept their relationship professional. They joked about the rule that didn't let them date co-workers. When Vance separated from Abby, he told his parents about the divorce and why. But he waited until after the divorce to tell them about his half-siblings, Camille and Eric. He invited his parents to New York to meet them. They were very surprised. They apologized for not telling Vance about his adoption, saying they wanted him to feel secure. Camille shared the whole story, and then Vance's parents asked if he planned to find his biological mother, Gabriela Ruiz. He hadn't thought about it before. He searched online and found out she was alive and wealthy. But Vance wasn't sure if he wanted to meet her because no one could replace the parents who raised him. Damon Davenport and the former vice presidents, Steve Crenshaw, Frank Sutton, Bernard Ledbetter, Craig Barstow, and Philip Harmon were held until their trial. Steve was accused of stealing a lot of money. Vance testified that Steve framed him. Steve said Damon was the mastermind behind it all, trying to get rid of Vance. Damon and Steve got 6-year sentences and had to pay $50,000 each. The stolen money had been returned long before the trial. Steve did not want to be part of the kidnapping or murder plans, so he wasn't charged with those crimes. Damon, Frank, Bernard, Craig, and Philip were found guilty of kidnapping Vance and Carolyn. Damon got life in prison without parole. The others got 40 years but could be paroled after 15 years. The district attorney gave the camera with the evidence back to Vance. Copies of the videos were kept in their files. Vance made a copy of the video and then destroyed the camera and memory chip. He kept the video in a safe place and never told Carolyn about it. Carolyn's truth was too much for Abby. She became so upset that she thought about ending her own life. She stopped eating and taking care of herself, and sadly, she lost her baby. After she told her parents about her dark thoughts, they took her back to Columbus for therapy. It took a year of treatment for her to start over. She got a job as a staff accountant and planned to take the CPA exam. Therapy helped Abby see what she had become. It would be a while before she thought about dating again. Vance didn't have anyone special in his life for now. He grew closer to his half-siblings Camille and Eric and became a loved uncle to their kids. He felt he needed time to think about everything that had happened before moving on. After what he went through with Carolyn, Vance saw new possibilities. He had never considered dating outside his race. He realized that his hesitation wasn't about integrity, but about prejudice. Maybe his biological father had more to teach him. Vance wanted to be a better person. Looking back, Vance felt amazed by the opportunities that had come from his past troubles. At the same time, he wondered what his life would have been like without all the struggles. Would he have been just as happy without the success? While dealing with his personal struggles, he spent a whole year working closely with Stan. Together, they put his ideas and plans into the company's work, making even more money. He often thought about his future love life. He had a rewarding job and a caring big family, but he still felt empty inside. This space used to be filled by his loving wife. Could he ever feel that way again? Now he always listened to Pentatonix's version of Leonard Cohen's song Hallelujah on his MP3 player. Hey audience, if you like this video and want to keep up with more thrilling stories, make sure to subscribe to Prince Cheating Tales and hit the notification bell. You don't want to miss out on our upcoming adventures. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next wonderful story.